All right, I'm going to get started on cleaning up this frame. Now, this is not my original frame. My original frame had a little bit of damage to it, and of the frame shops I contacted, there's about 15 plus shops around that do that type of work. Only 2 of them were interested in touching my old frame. One wouldn't give me a price. The other one said $900. And I kind of thought through that. I was going to do it. Then this frame, this is actually a 1984 frame, came up available on Facebook Marketplace, and I decided to, when I looked at it, measured it up, everything seems good. It's got some issues, and that's why I got to straighten up. But I decided to go with this frame. Now, the big difference in CJ frames, in 1982, now this is, the frame is upside down, and this is the rear. But you see that shock tower mount? Prior to 82, so 81 and prior, the front shock tower mount looked just like that, mounted up here. And then in 82, they got rid of the welded on shock tower mount, and they actually have a bolted on one. It bolts on, and it's actually a taller mount, so you see that. I'll show you an image of that. As well as, and then the next big change in frames for CJs was in 85 and 86. Back here, they put a little gusset piece. That's the only real difference between all these frames, so they're all interchangeable. But this one, I do have some repair work, and it's really going to start right here with this back cross member. You can see it's got some damage here. It's not held on very well, and these body mounts are just in terrible condition. So I've already bought the replacement for this. I'm going to take this off. I've measured the distance between the outside of the frame and the outside of that on both sides is equal to the 1/16 of an inch. So without further ado, let's get that pulled off. All right, this is that first side that I cut off. Again, the frame's upside down, so this is the passenger side. This would be the bottom normally. Only the bottom had tack weld on it. Of course, I got a lot of rust here and here, and I've got a place right here. I've got a patch. This is the only place in the whole frame that I got a patch, is about right in here. We're going to do that shortly. But let me show you the other side. The other side was a little more difficult. This is the second side that I took apart. Took a little more effort, only because it doesn't have the rot that the other side has. Again, upside down. This is the driver's side. This would normally be the bottom. There's a nice bead along the back, as well as beads up both sides, and nothing actually on the top. That was interesting. So that thing came. I got to kind of cut around, just kind of get closer to where I can get close enough to get to these welds. But now by opening this up, I can get access to this side as well as the front side of this tube. I've got a specialized nozzle for my pressure washer. I'm going to use that, and it actually jets sideways. It goes sideways, so it's going to help clean these internal walls and get this prepared for some internal frame coating. Here's a neat kit I bought off of Amazon. It's got 100 feet of hose. I think it's 1/4 inch hose. Came with 4 different nozzles. This one actually has a rotating head on it. and the holes are on the side at an angle, so they actually pressure wash backwards. And I'm hoping that's going to be able to, as it rotates, basically clean the inside of my frame, get all the loose debris off so I can do that internal frame coating. It's got a special connector here that I've added to this side of it, and I'll put this on my pressure washer and see how well it does. I actually bought this kit to clean out the drainage system of my home, and I'll do that at some point, but for right now, let's see how it works on this frame. Okay, I think that pressure washing went really well. Is the inside of this perfect? No. Are you ever going to get it perfect without scrubbing it or something? I don't think you can. I think it's well prepared for the internal frame coating that I'm going to do. I'm going to use this product from Eastwood, and specifically it says converts, encapsulates, and seals rust on internal frame surfaces. Phenolic resin with zinc additive. So as long as you get the loose stuff out, then you're going to be good. Now, when I finished pressure washing this, I did stand this up, this being the back surface. I stood it up on this surface and leaned it against the shop because I wanted all the loose water to come out, and a bunch of loose stuff fell out, and what I realized is some of the lower dips, that nozzle wasn't strong enough to actually force that stuff backwards like I thought it was doing. So anyway, a lot of more stuff fell out, and I ended up using a water hose and sprayed water hose through all the different hoses, holes all the way up through the frame, and just more stuff kind of fell out. So I believe all the loose stuff is now gone, so that is ready for that internal frame coating. That's going to happen later. Right now, I want to fix this. This is the only place that I think I'm going to do any metalworking.
as far as fixing rust on this frame. Everything else is fine. There's one more piece on the back side, but I'm probably not going to bother with that. I want to cut this out. What I've done already is I've measured these holes and compared them to the other side, and they're symmetrical. So from the other side, I was able to come up with this template, and it basically has, I got a board on the bottom so I can get the elevation of this just right, and then I flush this with the back, and that's where these holes will go. I'll use that to mark the center of the holes and get those holes drilled into the new patch. And then I'm going to actually now come in here, and just below this radius, I think I'll come in here and cut this, mark this, and cut this off, probably back to here somewhere. And then you know, down along the bottom, it's got a little cave part here. I'm not trying to make this look perfect. It's going to be very strong, and it's going to be very functional. I got to keep the same width. I got to have the holes roughly in the same spot. Any bumper you're going to mount, this is for mounting bumpers. Any bumper you mount, it's going to have slotted holes on it, so it's always adjustable. These don't have to be exactly perfect. And then I've also measured the thickness of this. Is 1/8 inch steel. I don't have any of that. I'm going to have to go to the store and get some supply of steel so I can actually make that patch, but I do want to get that cut out. Yeah, I know you saw it too, but I didn't realize from the outside before cutting this off how bad these nuts are. This one's really rotted bad. I'm going to grind off both of these, and then what I realized is my kit, I bought a whole suspension kit for this Jeep, as well as including that YJ front spring upgrade. But the kit, I did not buy this rear spring hanger, and so but I'm going to go order that. Meanwhile, I'll take the old one, just use it for these spacing, get those ground off, get this thing bolted back on, and then use that to space out new nuts and get that welded on. All right, so this patch went in really well. Real pleased the way it turned out. I don't think there's any more patching on this frame that I'm gonna need to do. I also like the way that I was able to, with this open, get to those capture nuts. Made it a lot easier to weld those in. The other side needs the same thing, so I'm gonna do that real quick. Get those ground off and get new nuts put on those the same way I did this. I just won't have the access from the side. I have to do it from the end. But after that, I'm gonna go through the entire frame and look for any bolts that have been broke off that are actually stuck in capture nuts. I need to get those freed up just before I'm ready to do that internal frame coating. I don't want to put the coating on and have it make it more difficult to get those bolts out. So let me get the other side done, and then we're going to go around and look for broken bolts. Okay.
Grab with your hand.
Wow, that actually worked really good. This is a new kit that I bought. I bought it a long time ago thinking I might need it, but I've never used it. But it's got all these different sizes of extractions. When you got a bolt that's broke off, as you tighten it down on there, it actually as you're trying to loosen the bolt, this thing tightens, gets a better grip on the bolt. So you can see this bolt's got a bunch of just rusted wear on it. Heating it up and shocking it a little bit allowed it to come right off. So now we're going to try and tackle this one. All right, the only other bolt that I had that was stripped off was right here. This is where the cross member goes to hold the transmission and transfer case. There's these three bolts you can see, and there's another one right over here. And that allows you to either mount that forward or backward, depending, I guess, on maybe on which engine choice you got in the Jeep. But since this is one of the center ones, I do need it to work. And I was actually, it was broken off down in there pretty deep, and I was just taking a center punch just to kind of punch a center hole where I could start drilling it, and it actually, the captured nut punched all the way through, so it's gone. So my next choice is actually going to use one of these riv nuts. And while these bolts, they are 7/16 16 pitch, I don't have that in a riv nut, but this is an M10, which is so close, I'm going to use it. The actual bolt will thread all the way through it and get to the very last piece, and then it gets a little bit bound, and that's going to be fine for what we're doing here. So let me, and this is the first time I've used this riv nut tool. I bought it a while back, just knowing that I would have a lot of opportunities to potentially use it, so I'm going to give it a try. Alright, so just like that, I now have it's M10, but it's going to work for my bolt and nothing else, I'll just put an M10 bolt in it. But that's now fixed, this piece, so now my cross member is going to work. That should be the end of that, so I think I'm about ready to actually do my internal coating. Alright, as I mentioned before, I'm going to use this internal frame coating by Eastwood. It's got a phenolic resin and zinc additive, basically just stops rust, and it comes with a 24-inch nozzle. And I was looking at the very end of this nozzle, and it looks like it sprays forward and at an angle. So once it gets pushed in here, you're supposed to push the button and just start pulling it out. So I'm going to do that. And then I've actually spent the past couple of days on the phone with some sandblasting, local sandblasters, just to see what the opportunity would be to have like the external part of this sandblasted, and that was going to make a decision whether I internal frame coated it now or later. And it's interesting, man. Over the past, I contacted a couple maybe 8 months ago, thinking this project would be coming up, and you know, the prices were $300 to $400, and right now I contacted 5 companies, and it was between $500 and $750 just to sandblast this frame. The frame is less than 12 feet long. It is closed in, boxed in frame rails and stuff, but I can't believe it would take an hour and a half for one of those big sandblasting companies to do this thing. And one even told me it was like a $98 per hour rate, and they gave me a $500 estimate. I just can't do that. So ultimately, I'm going to be grinding this, relieving all this external coating off of here, and kind of finishing. I think I'll grind off all the flat spots, and then I'm going to sandblast all the little nooks and crannies. But with that decision also, I think I am going to go ahead and internal frame coat this now, because I want to get the coating in there. That way any of the sandblasting gets in there. It just sits on top of the coating. It doesn't actually get in there and then get encapsulated in there as well. And I'll have to clean it back out again. So it's very clean right now. So let's get this thing pushed in and see how this works. Alright, that went really well. I went ahead and did the other side, as well as came back after it dried and did this side, the original side, about 3/4 of the way down, then ran out of paint. That's a 14-ounce can, which you'd think would go a long ways, but that nozzle really allows that paint to come out big. So I've just got one can on this. It did basically two coats on 3/4 of this frame and only one coat on the other frame, and I thought, okay, I'll just get another can. But as much paint comes out on that, I think it got a really good coating, so I think I'm really good. So I think we'll finish there and then go start working on this outside. Okay, so for grinding this stuff off, I went out and picked up a couple different options. One is just on a wire wheel. I could possibly give that a try. And then here's a flap disc. This one's 80 grit. Goes on an angle grinder. This will do good, but it will dig into the metal pretty good. I remember back when I did some work on the tub, I got a polycarbide abrasive wheel. It's kind of a little spider web thing. This really removed paint well, and but didn't seem to touch the metal so much. So I want to start with this. I've actually got one on the grinder already, and give it a little spot a try and just see what it's going to take. All right, that worked really well, and kind of just as I remembered it. It takes the paint off pretty easily and does not get down into the metal so much. So I'm probably not going to use that flap disc. This little polycarbide bit is going to be the answer. I did this in no time. Interesting, I did review the technical data sheets for the Chasis Saver, and it actually doesn't want a very smooth surface. They want paint to be down to 120 to 180. They want rusted surfaces, just scuff it off, but leave some of the rust there for this paint to adhere to. So it does need a mechanical adhesion. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of knock out maybe this whole side here, and then again I'm going to use that bit or that disc for the big flat surfaces, and then when I get to small etchy corners like this, I will take this whole frame outside and we'll do some sandblasting. But let me get most of this done and I'll bring you back. All right, so I got all the sides sanded like I wanted to, and got all the loose stuff kind of knocked off, and now it's time to do some sandblasting. I got to get into these nooks and crannies and the areas in these brackets that I couldn't get to. Want to get all the loose stuff off, not trying to get down to really bare metal. I probably spent 2.5 to 3 hours on the sanding. Just came down a couple nights during the week and spent an hour or so, and kind of got that knocked out. Wasn't bad at all. What's left, again, the tight spots, as well as there was a spot up near the engine that had a lot of oil buildup on it. I think the sandblaster is just going to take that off better or easier, so I just left that like it is. My setup is a 60-gallon air compressor. This is a Harbor Freight sandblasting. It's called a pot blaster, I believe, and the way it comes is really unusable. You can see I got this silver nozzle on the end of it and no valve also on the end. That's a different way of doing it. Adding that, I think it was a $45–50 upgrade, and by doing that, this thing is a blast to work. So anyway, and the key to it is how you turn it on. You turn on air only and have air coming out that clears that black line of any loose sand, and then you slowly introduce sand into that black hose, and typically I get to about a 45-degree angle, and that's about where I stop. I don't go full with the sand. So I'm gonna get that all set up. I'll do a little spot, show you. I'm not gonna film the entire thing because it just fills the camera with sand, but let me show you a little bit of blasting. All right, sandblasting is complete. That took just a little under 2 hours. I used black diamond, and I'm going to stand it up on the end just to get any loose material back from the inside, get that stuff where it'll fall out, and then I'll get it moved back into the shop. All right, let me share with you what my plan, and my plan is I'm going to use this Chasis Saver. be honest, it wasn't my first choice. I kept reading where everybody was brushing on with paint brushes, and I thought that's just not the way to do it. But I saw some finishes and it looked really good, so it levels out really well. So I bought it and paint brushes. Then I decided, after a lot of thinking, that I'm just going to spray it on, because while this is great for rust protection, it's going to help me there. What it doesn't do, it doesn't have good UV protection. They say if it's got UV or sun exposure, you want to top coat it, and while it's a frame and it's not going to have much sun coating, it does also get chalky or something. So, and this is a satin color, and I guess a satin will be okay, but I wanted to have a kind of a semi-gloss, so I'm going to top coat it with this. That'll get rid of that'll help UV protect it, as well as basically won't allow it to chalk out and that type of stuff. So I'm gonna go over it with this. I'm gonna take this and thin it 10% with, this is what's recommended. We'll get that all mixed up and painted on, and I'll do that, and then I'll bring you back and show you kind of the result, what it looks like. I'm gonna try and get 2 coats out of this, and then I'm gonna go and put 2 coats of this on, and I'll bring you back and kind of show you that as well. So let me walk you out, just kind of show you again kind of what position we are. After I brought the frame inside, I did do a little more sanding on it. I have used this Prep-All as a wax and grease remover. Now, be honest with you, I don't care for this either. This is about half gone. I've used a lot of it. This seems to leave a little bit of a film. I don't know, I mean, if you've got experience, good experience with it, I'd love to hear from you. If you've used this and did not like it, because again, that film, just don't know how it's going to affect adhesion. But again, it's prior to sanding and painting, and it was recommended by the automotive paint store that I have here. So anyway, this is what I've been using. I just don't have any experience whether or not it affects the contact quality of the paint. So anyway, let me show you the frame. All right, here's what we ended up with. The polycarbide bit just took off everything. The sandblasting in those corners got everything out of there. That looks nice. I did leave some of the paint. As long as it's got a nice scratch on it, this stuff will bite to it. So, and as you can see here, this has got a nice sandblasted finish to it. That paint will stick onto it really well. As well as there's an area where there's just extra weld splatter and stuff like that. You know, I got some of that off in some spots. Some spots it just doesn't really matter. Again, this is a frame. I'm not looking for a automotive finish on this. I want a nice finish, but I want more of a protective finish. So I actually kind of overlooked that. I just spotted that now, but I'm not going to take that off. I'm going to paint right over it. All right, sorry about the lighting, but here's the finished look at the Chasis Saver. This is basically 4 coats, 2 from the top side, including the sides, as well as 2 from this bottom. This is the bottom of the frame. 2 from the bottom side, kind of over covering the sides as well. And each coat, when you spray it, you wait 6 hours, and it's completely dry at 6 hours. At 5 hours, it's still barely tacky, but again, you wait 6 hours, and it's good. Interestingly, it says it wants warmer temperatures are better, and moisture temperatures. It actually cures better with moisture, so your higher humidity is better. One thing, I actually do like this satin black color. I'd leave it like that, other than the fact that this does not have a very good UV protection, as well as after a little while, maybe a year, I think they report that it kind of turns chalky, and I don't want that. So we're going to top coat this with a semi-gloss. We'll be doing that next. Now, this turned out well. Each of the coats, like the first coat I did with that 10% reducer, and I got a lot of runs, to be honest with you. I also tried it with no reducer, and it came out kind of splotchy, even though it did level out pretty well. That's just not the way to spray that. I found it best to do 5% reducer. That seemed to go on a lot well, as well as I used a 1.5 tip in my spray gun. So let me show you just a couple quick pictures of some of the runs. You've seen runs before, but let me show you how kind of, it really is more, I think they call them sags. Let me show you that. All right, here's an example of those runs and kind of the sag where this was on the first or second coat when I was doing the 10% reduction, and you just see through here where it just kind of flowed over from the top and ran down. But I'll knock that off with sandpaper, just kind of even out some, and then we'll get it top coated. All right, check this out. This frame is now complete. It got 2 coats of Chasis Saver and 2 coats of Rust-oleum. The Rust-oleum did leave a nice semi-gloss finish. I do like that. Interesting thing about the Rust-oleum is it actually requires 24 hours before recoating. So this whole process with 2 different materials using and 2 coats on the top, 2 coats on the bottom each, that's 8 different sessions. It took 8 different painting sessions to paint this. And with all the delays and requiring it to dry and cure out before each top coat, each next coat, I painted this 8 different times over 9 different days. So it's a lot different than what I was thinking when I said, hey, I'm gonna go paint the chassis. It feels really good having this done. This is the foundation of the Jeep. I do have one more piece I've got to resolve before I'm ready to start the major assembly of all the components, and we're going to take care of that next. Thank you for watching. I appreciate every one of you. If you like this type of content, I would consider subscribing so you don't miss out.
Jack it up.